going to speak. So it is business as usual now, really. We're going to hear from Joe Lieberman, who, remember, was a Democratic vice presidential running mate for Al Gore, who is now an independent, but he's going to give a character witness about John McCain, very good friends. Also, we're going to hear from Fred Thompson as well, who was another of the Republican presidential potential candidates who lost out to John McCain, but a good friend of John McCain. He's an actor in Law and Order, or was an actor in Law and Order, and he's also going to be giving that testimony in favor of John McCain. So they're going to try and refocus very much this convention back on John McCain and his presidential bid.
The Sarah Palin news, which broke yesterday, what have most delegates made of that?
Well, I mean, some are clearly surprised, but overall, I mean, there is huge support and empathy for her in this situation. They view it very much as a private matter, but what they like about Sarah Palin is that, yes, she has those traditional values that they hold, the party faithful. She is pro-life, and she is practicing essentially what she preaches.
Jonathan, we must leave it there. I'm sorry, we're going to leave it there because we're going to go to Louisiana because there's a press conference starting with Bobby Jindal, the governor of Louisiana, and Michael Chertoff, Homeland Security Secretary.
Plaquemine and St. Tammany parishes probably have the storm surge that is now falling. They probably are the last two parishes to see this tidal surge continue to fall. As of this morning, the tidal surge was still rising. Those are the last two parishes where they expect the surge to continue to fall. St. Tammany especially will see that water come down very slowly. They're expecting 4 to 6 inches of rain in southeast Louisiana today, concentrated west of I-55. There is still the possibility of tornadoes. Probably the greatest danger in South Louisiana continues to be the heavy rains. The secondary danger is tornadoes. The tertiary, the more distant danger would be this residual storm surge. They are going to be issuing some flood watches around certain river areas. The reality, though, is for South Louisiana, heavy rains are the greatest challenge. We do have reports, unconfirmed reports of significant damage in northern Louisiana. As many of you know who've been watching the storm was expected to head more west. Instead, it went up through Louisiana. And so literally now you've got a storm that's caused widespread damage through a wide geographic part of our state. I want to share several updates with you today, including healthcare updates as well as utility and power updates. One of the things, I'm going to start with healthcare on purpose, and one of the things I want to stress, I know a lot of people have been watching the storm. We're all relieved that it appears the levees, the flood walls have maintained their integrity. The federally maintained levees and flood walls have maintained their integrity in southeast Louisiana. As many of you have seen, we do not have reports of widespread flooding in southeast Louisiana. We do not have the breaches. We had some overtopping yesterday at the Industrial Canal. But one of the things I want to emphasize is that this is still a very, very serious storm that has caused major damage in our state. And I'm going to start by talking about health care in particular. We still have a number of pressing, urgent issues when it comes to health care. I describe the evacuation as the kind of the pre-game, the pre-season, if you will, and I warned people that even after days of evacuations and preparatory efforts, they shouldn't be exhausted because this was a marathon. We're not yet quite at halftime, to use a sporting analogy. People need to understand there's a lot more work ahead of us. A lot of damage has been caused by this storm. The evacuation of patients that took place even before the storm made landfall was the largest medical evacuation in our nation's history. Over 1,000 patients were moved out of harm's way through a combination of ambulances, airlifts, buses, moved people out of hospitals, out of nursing homes. I can't stress enough how important that was to move people out of harm's way. We still have critical needs right now when it comes to our healthcare infrastructure. We had a total of 72 hospitals that we have been in contact with overnight, 72 hospitals in the impacted areas. We were able to make contact with 52 of those hospitals in regions 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9. The other 20 hospitals, we were not able to contact. 6 of those were specialty hospitals. 14 were community hospitals. We are fairly confident they either entirely evacuated or mostly evacuated. Those were smaller hospitals. We are now in the process of putting air support in the air so we can put eyes on these hospitals. We're also working with the Louisiana Hospital Association to make contact with these hospitals to determine whether they continue to have patients, whether they continue to have needs. Of the 52 hospitals that we were able to make contact with in regions 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9, 12 of those hospitals have patients without HVAC, without air conditioning. In other words, they may have generators that aren't supplying their air conditioning. They may have generators for critical care equipment. The remaining hospitals either have power or were shut down before the storm, or they have generators that are supplying their HVACs. And going back to those 12 hospitals, this is a particular concern of ours because there are many critical care patients who will need additional care and will either need to be evacuated or will need to get additional generating capacity and power to these hospitals. Even as late as last night, we evacuated a hospital here in West Baton Rouge. We evacuated River West. 15 patients last night were moved to a federal center. Of those this morning, 8 patients were moving today to Tulane where they can get the care they need. And when you look at some of the other evacuations, we evacuated 19 patients from Savoy Medical in Mamou, including 1 newborn who were safely evacuated. We evacuated 13 patients from Mamou Extended Care, an LTAC hospital. We evacuated overnight and into this morning 44 patients from Ville Platte. We are evacuating 27 patients from the two general hospital locations here in Baton Rouge. That includes their Mid-City and their Bluebonnet locations. There were originally 18 NICU patients that they anticipated having to evacuate because of the lack of HVAC. They were able to stay in place once they were able to get power back up. And we have 60 ICU patients at Our Lady of the Lake that we may need to evacuate depending on the power situation, how quickly Entergy is able to get power restored there. When you look at the needs we've identified, we've got 12 hospitals we've identified that may need to evacuate over the next 72 hours, depending on how quickly we can get them power. And what we're doing now is we're literally supplying additional fuel to generators where hospitals have generators in place. We're working with the Corps. They're sending out assessment teams to see if hospitals without generators need generators. One estimate of what the challenge we're facing, and these numbers, let me emphasize, these numbers will change significantly. But over the next 72 hours, we could be looking at having to evacuate 814 hospital patients. Now remember, we evacuated over 1,000 patients before the storms, and that was using flights every 30 minutes. So this is a very, very important and big challenge. We can certainly do it using the ambulances we have here, using the buses, using the air support we would get not only from the National Guard but outside the state. And again, that is a number that I would absolutely expect to change as circumstances on the ground change. In addition to hospitals, well, let me mention one other hospital incident. We had a generator failure in Thibodaux. There were 53 patients there in that hospital literally overnight. Louisiana State Police, despite the weather, were able to escort a technician from Alabama at high speed, got him to the hospital. They were able to fix the generator. Those patients are safely in place. The problem has been resolved. And so I want to emphasize there are absolutely critical healthcare needs that continue to remain in place that we continue to have to address. It's not just hospitals. We have 7 nursing homes. We sent 7 generators last night to 7 nursing homes. Again, we're addressing this issue to make sure that nursing homes as well as hospitals have the power they need, not only for critical care, but for those patients that need it for HVAC support as well. Now, the good news is Lake Charles, Lafayette hospitals are reporting they do have power. We are sending fuel to those hospitals running on generators. For example, Slidell Memorial was down to their last 12 hours of fuel.
Let's leave this press conference by Bobby Jindal, Governor of Louisiana. We're also waiting to hear from the Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff, but talking about the power situation in the various hospitals in that area which have been affected by Hurricane Gustav, but that the main news seems to be that Hurricane Gustav did not wreak any of the damage that was feared, certainly in the run-up to its approaching New Orleans.